So I'm so delighted to be joined by Sue Cleaver, who many of you will know from the last 24 years playing Eileen Grimshaw in Coronation Street. But she is so much more than that as well. She's had a very successful tour in Sister Act the musical, turned 60 last year, and now is an author. She's got a new book out called A Work in Progress, and I've read it from cover to cover, and I can honestly say I really, really enjoyed it. And listeners, I'm sorry if this interview goes off a little bit longer than is expected. It's because there's so much I want to talk about with Sue. So thank you. Thank you so much, Sue. I know you're really busy at the moment.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm delighted to be talking to you.
So I want to focus more on the book than your acting career, quite honestly, because I'm sure you've spoken about that a lot. And right now you're an author. And
I can't believe it. Can you say that again?
yes, so I'm talking to the author, Sue Cleaver, of A Work in Progress. And I really think your book clearly falls into two parts, doesn't it? There's the
Mhm,
part that paints a picture of what makes you you and why
mhm,
you feel the way that you do and what you went through. And then there's the second, delightfully mature wise part where you impart some advice to so many of us midlife women who do feel like perhaps the best days have passed us by. Perhaps we are feeling a little bit invisible and we
mhm.
feel a lack of purpose. So, can I take you back, like right to the very beginning? One of the fundamental things that make you you is that you were adopted, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I was adopted um, a few weeks after my mother gave birth. So, adopted by my wonderful family, my mum Frida and John, and my brother, who is not adopted, who's 4.5 years older than me. So yes, adopted, and always knew that I was adopted. I can't remember a time when I didn't know. But yes, so that's sort of like the first, I suppose, thing that made me me. Um,
And your family, they didn't make you feel any different, but you always felt different, didn't you?
Absolutely, no, my family never made me feel different, but it was just in me. There is just that sense, and I think not. I'm not saying everyone, but for a lot of adopted children, there is that you carry something with you, that you are other, you are different, and I could just. It was just always with me, a sense of not belonging, not knowing where I belonged. Um,
Mm.
and getting very lost in that. Now I can look back and go, "Well, I always belonged. It was my thinking around it that was wrong." But I think it's a very strange thing to 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 grow up and never ever look into another person's eyes and see familiarity.
Mm. Mm.
To never look at someone and go, "Oh, look, I've got the same eyes," or "That look, we've got the same hands." No, and it sounds such a tiny thing, but it was huge to me. And, I used to love it. I mean, I think, in those days, I don't know how adoption works now, but my mum said they actually match you up quite well. Similar backgrounds, you would go to similar backgrounds that you were born into, and, you know, height, color of hair.
So physically, quite similar
Yes.
too.
So a lot of the time people would say, "Oh, don't you look like your dad?" I mean, he had fair hair and stuff, but I think it's the nurture part. You get your mannerisms.
Yes,
You
those
pick up mannerisms.
idiosyncrasies that you notice in
Absolutely,
somebody else.
absolutely. But it was
Yeah.
such a big deal for me that when my son was born, I was totally overwhelmed that I had this little being, and that, oh my God, his DNA was running through my DNA. Look, does it? Oh my God, look at his eyebrows. Look, they're the same shape as mine. Look at his earlobes. Oh, look. To be able to recognize yourself in another human being was extraordinary to me.
Really special.
Absolutely extraordinary. Yeah.
Now, throughout your younger life, I got a real sense of sadness, I would say, for the way that you tried to fit in so often. probably didn't help, did it, that you were moving around from school to school, started off in Gordonston where your father was working, and you
Yeah,
end up, um, you do mention that you sort of tried on personalities like coats in a
yeah,
shop. You
yeah,
just you just try and fit in and be
mhm,
part of the set.
yeah.
But that kind of ended up in some behavior that perhaps wasn't easy for your parents to deal with, and maybe looking back, you
No,
thought,
certainly not. Yeah, I mean, up until the age about 12, or as you say, my father taught at Gordonston. And so we lived on the school. So it was quite a privileged position to be in. And of course, in the holidays, the school is like a mile and a half long. My brother and I just had the run of it, and it was my domain. I mean, at 10 years old, I had a moped, and
oh
off
my
I'd go.
oh my gosh.
Me and my brother had mopeds, and it was like, be home before it's dark and don't go near the lake, which of
But you
course
know,
I did.
but a lot of us lived like that, didn't we? When we were sort of
Yeah.
that generation. I'm the same. I
Mm,
would go off on a bike and go off for hours and hours, and mum
yeah.
wouldn't know where I was. There was
And I
one part.
think,
Sorry.
no, no, no. I think, that, like you say, a lot of us did lead that kind of life. And then my father, I did play an instrument and was classed as sort of quite good at my violin playing, and it was like, oh, she's very good, and she keeps getting distinctions in her exams. And then my father got offered a job at Cheetham School of Music, a specialist music school, uh, and he obviously wanted to move on his next part of his career, and obviously thought, well, Sue's great at music. This is gonna work for all of us. Well, it didn't. I mean, I wasn't a
Mm.
musical genius, which is what those schools are producing. Um, and I didn't really want to play the violin anymore. It was just a bit of a whim. So it was life became very difficult. I went from a very idyllic situation to effectively 70s concrete jungle, um, and with no sense of self, of who I am or what I was good. And all I could see was look around me and see that I just wasn't as good as anybody else at playing music. And sort of just that's where I started to really lose myself even more.
That must have been so hard because you were talented, but you were with this pool of kids who were truly gifted. And
Mm,
you mentioned that you were you went and played the Furlese, and you thought,
really.
yeah, yeah, this is great. And they're like, oh my gosh, is that all she's got? That's
Yeah.
what's in
Yeah.
her
They were
bag.
already, I mean, some of them were probably already 13 and playing the Rachmaninoff. So it
Yeah.
was kind of like, um, yeah, so it was hard. So I was always, so that all that did was add to that othering sense again. Um, but throughout it all, I don't think, I look back and go, oh God, Sue, you poor thing, you poor thing. But I don't think I just got on with things. I did just get on with things. I didn't know that, I don't think I even understood that you could express when you were feeling sad. I think I was quite repressed. I didn't know
Mm.
that was something you were able to do, to actually say, I don't feel good. You just were it.
Got on with it.
Um, and I think that's where the start of my rebelliousness began. That I just rebel against everything and everybody. And I think it was bane of my parents, my teachers, everybody's lives, who were trying to they wanted the best for me and trying to direct me down these roads, and I was I'm not having any of it. And yet now I would look back and saying that rebelliousness is the one thing that has served me the best.
Yeah, you say the bolshy part of you that
Mm,
other people might find difficult was probably the thing that saved you.
absolutely.
And that must have been very
Absolutely.
tricky for your parents because from what I understand from your book is that they were wonderfully supportive, but not
Mhm.
outwardly very emotional.
No.
And some of you mentioned watching Saturday afternoon wrestling. Ah, I remember those days with Big Daddy and Mick
Yeah.
McManus and Giant
Yeah.
Haystack. We all
Yeah.
used to watch that, didn't we, on a Saturday
Yeah.
afternoon?
That was,
So,
wrestling with my dad in the, my
so
dad
you
getting
have,
me in a headlock and a donkey scrub, and I used to live for Saturday afternoons
but
wrestling
so
with
you
my
do
dad.
have very fond memories of
Oh
part
my
of your
God, yeah.
youth. But it did end up that, this othering, this feeling of never quite fitting in, you did end up with a lot of rebellious things going on. And by 16, I hope you don't mind if I share this, because you do talk about it in the book, that you did end up getting pregnant by
I did.
a considerably older man at 16.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
it sounds to
He's
me like,
he's 70,
was it
17 when I got
17 at that
17.
point?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes.
How did you deal with that at the time? Or was it again like, okay, I'm going to deal with this, survive, move on, box it for later?
I just, like everything, I just got on with everything. I always just got on with everything. I remember getting pregnant, and I remember it was that period of time when your father would threaten, it's like, "Yo, if you don't believe, imagine you're coming back in this house if if you get pregnant with a baby,"
Mm.
which of course added to my, oh my god, I'm something wrong with me because somebody had me. And it's like, so he said that whole thing about I'll chuck you out if you have a baby. I was once that baby, so it added into that. But I don't think he ever would have. I think it was just their way of trying to be sensible.
Or to set
um
consequences to
yeah,
stop it ever happening.
yeah. But when I found out I was pregnant, I sorted it all, I arranged it all. And then I told my mother, I sat her down, I said, Mum, listen, and this is at 17, there's a situation. Don't worry, I've sorted it. It's all sorted. Would you give me a lift to the hospital? But it's okay if you don't want to, because I know which bus I can get, and I know how to get there. And so don't worry if you don't want to.
You're
And
so
that's how I dealt.
young.
That's how
I
I
mean,
dealt with
that's incredibly mature and sort of detached way of dealing with it. It's
it. Mature in some
breaks my
ways, but
heart.
clearly not mature in other ways.
Right.
I was floundering. I just, I mean, what's been crazy to me, part of my journey, and I think I talk about in the book, is that this feeling of insecurity, of not being strong enough, of not having resilience. And I look back and I go, how could I ever think I wasn't resilient?
Mm,
I'm the
mm.
most resilient person in the world. I've dealt with everything that's come my way, and I've batted it off. But it's those beliefs we have about ourselves. It's the beliefs that we, tired old beliefs that we are a certain way, that because we think something, we believe it's true. Well, what I realize now is our thoughts don't necessarily tell us the truth. They are just thoughts.
Mm.
And you don't
I'd
have
like
to
to get onto
believe
that more actually, because you
it.
did eventually train as a therapist later
Mm.
in life. So I definitely want to return to that with you. But I mean, gosh, you are resilient. That does shine through, because not only do you have determination, you then take yourself off to Canada and work as a nanny in quite difficult circumstances, actually, with a young baby that needed to be held all the time, or
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of responsibility as a teenager? I'm amazed the
Ridiculous.
parents just left you with that child.
Well, I cannot imagine. I mean, well, what were they thinking?
Yeah.
What were they thinking? But yeah, this baby had quite a lot of uh, problems. And if the baby ever cried, it used to have apnea, just stop breathing and would turn blue. And the fear. So every morning when they went to work, I had this, oh my God, how many hours have I got? How many hours have I got? 8 hours, 8 hours. I've got to, this baby can't cry in this 8 hours. And I'd be like obsessing about it. And then when it cried, it's like, I didn't dare put the baby down. And then I think, well, it needs a nap, but what if it had a nap, and what if it happened on my watch, and what if, and so I just sort of like sit with this baby, just like so unhappy and so miserable and feeling stuck. And just that was when I started, this is not where I'm meant to be. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing.
But fortunately for you, you had this weird child. A lot of things seem to have happened to you in your life for a
Yeah.
reason.
There's a lot of
That's the
synchronicity, isn't there? A
There
lot of
really is. It's
synchronicity.
weird the way things have happened to you, because you wanted to go and see a psychic, but you couldn't afford it. And then you bump into her in a bar.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily. I wasn't. I don't know what I am. She was on the radio, And I tuned in and I was listening and I was like, oh, that's fascinating. Oh, I'd love to go and do that, but I can't afford to do that. She was up doing, she used to do stuff searching for missing children. And I think she'd done something with the Ottawa police. I can't remember. So she was up off doing readings and running this 2-day seminar. And I was like, oh God, I wish I could do that. That would be great, but I can't. And then literally, I was in a bar one night, Jimmy's bar. We used to all sit around the piano playing on a Friday night and singing. And I saw this woman staring at me across the room. And I was like, what's she looking at? What a weirdo. She came over to me and she said, I am sorry to come over, but I see this gold emanating out of your head. And I was like, my God, she's drunk too much. What's she on about? And then she said, my name's Geraldine Smith Stringer. And I went, oh, my Lord. I said, I've heard you on the radio. She went, yes. She said, I really want to give you a reading. And I went, wow. I said, but I can't afford that. I mean, it was like a month's wages to a nanny. So I can't afford it. She said, no, I want to give it you for free. And she did. And I still have it on a little tape recording.
You do. That's
And
amazing.
said, you're not going to have to search for your mother, your birth mother. It will happen. And it did.
It did. It set you
Mm.
on a bit of a path, didn't it? Because you ended up in drama school in Manchester, same
Yeah, the
class as
reason I ended
Steve
up in drama
Coogan.
school was because at a similar time, my friend out there had joined an amateur dramatics group. And I always knew, like, I could never stick at any job. It's like the nannying or, various jobs I had. I hated it. I kept thinking, there's something I'm meant to do. There's something I'm meant to do. So she said to me, will you come and see me in this show? I went to see her in the show and it was shocking. And she was shocking. And I remember sitting there in the audience going, this is absolutely shocking. Oh, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be an actor. And I went home, I rang my mum and said, Mum, I'm coming home. I'm going to be an actor. She went, don't be ridiculous. You don't just go. She said, I spoke to you this morning. You were
You didn't want
talking
to be an
about,
actor then, did you?
oh, you didn't want to be an actor this morning. I said, well, I want to be an actor now, tonight.
Oh my
And
gosh, your mother is an extraordinary person.
yeah, so and that was it. I said, well, I am going to be an actress and I'm going to come home and I go to drama school. She said, you can't just go to drama school. You didn't even take your O levels, did you? Little dig. I said, well, I'll sort that out. So I came home, I sorted that out, and I went to drama school.
So looking back, look how you've made those changes happen when you thought these doors were closed. You just kept on until they opened again, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward, this I cannot believe. So you've always felt othered, you've always felt like you didn't belong, you knew you were adopted. And tell us about the most unbelievable meeting when you started
So
in the Royal Exchange.
yeah, Royal Exchange Theatre, the casting director came into the drama school and she wanted I think 3 or 4 people for small parts in Oedipus play. And I got chosen along with Steve Coogan, weirdly enough. So Steve Coogan and I got chosen and off we went to the first day of rehearsals and walked in. And I saw this man there and I remember saying, oh my Lord, I remember him. He presents that schools program called Finding Out. And unbeknownst to me, Michael was sat with David Threlfall and said, oh my God, she's the absolute double of my wife when I met her. She looks just like my wife. Cut to the show had opened. I was fascinated. I don't know why I was fascinated by Michael. I just wanted to know all about him. I wanted to really nosy. And then we were at a party once the show had opened and he was taking the mickey out of my accent. I said, don't take the mickey out of my accent. I've cultivated this. I've had so many accents in my life. And he said, where are you born? And I said, Barnet. And he said, what's your date of birth? And I told him, and I saw him staring at my hands. And I looked away for a second. I looked back and he'd gone. And unbeknownst to me, he'd gone to the phone box and he rang his wife and he said, I found her.
Literally, the hairs go up on my arm.
And
That's
a family of
amazing.
actors. A
So you
family
were
of actors.
always drawn to it
Yeah,
and you never even knew. The
no,
chances of that happening, I mean,
I know.
a million to one. Absolutely amazing. So
Extraordinary.
you go on to meet your birth mother, don't
I
you?
do indeed. Yes, I do. And my 2 half sisters, Emma and Kate. Kate, who's also like she's Wendy and Bob the Builder, and big in animation and stuff. But yeah, the whole family had been into acting. Yeah, grandmother,
Incredible.
dance teacher. Uh, yeah, so it was extraordinary, extraordinary.
So it goes full circle, and you meet your birth mother, and she even gets introduced to your adopted mother. And
Oh, my mum. I mean, one of my most treasured possessions is a letter addressed to me at the Royal Exchange Theatre. And my mum has put photographs of me when I was a baby and say, please, she didn't say your birth mother, she said, please tell your friends they're very welcome to visit.
oh,
And which is what we ended up doing. I remember we went round. I took Leslie to my mum and dad's. Leslie and Michael wasn't my father; he was her husband now. Took them to my parents, and my mum and dad had set up a whole slideshow of all the pictures when I was a baby. Uh, and I think probably a bit overwhelming for Leslie, my
it
birth mother,
must have
but
been.
such generosity. And
Yeah.
when I told my mum that this had happened, she went, "Oh my goodness!" I said, "Are you okay with this, Mum?" She says, "Oh my goodness!" She says, "Every time it's your birthday, I think about her. I think, is she okay? I hope we're doing right by her." And it was just so generous. And yeah, they became friends. And over the years, we saw each other lots. So, and it was like an extended family. I mean, I always say my mum always is my mum. Leslie always felt to me kind of like an elder sister or a cousin or an aunt. But yeah, so I was welcomed with open arms, and I've been very fortunate, and they were very generous. And my grandmother only died a couple of months ago, just about 6 weeks off her 105th birthday.
Oh,
So
extraordinary.
so I've had
Di-
all these years to know these people and have them in my life.
but it didn't stop you from still feeling othered, did it?
No.
It didn't complete the circle for you quite.
No, it didn't complete the circle. If anything, it brought up a different set of things to think about, and about loyalties, and where you should be. And I think I started running from it all and searched to escape the intensity of the situation early on. And yes, always this sense of finding the right place to fit in. Still didn't feel like the right fit. It
Mm,
wasn't the right fit. There was still sort of things not right. And so then the next thing came along, the next boyfriend, the next this, the next experience.
yeah,
Always searching, always
always
searching.
searching for something.
Yeah.
Now, one of those searches or one of those feelings led you into a relationship with alcohol that wasn't quite so healthy, wasn't it?
Well, I think I loved my red wine, and I think by the time it was like it wasn't that the time that I realized that it wasn't okay was when in the pandemic. Because before that, yes, I always loved alcohol, and yes, there'd always be some wine with dinner. But when you're getting up in the morning and you've got to work, and if you've got a heavy schedule, you do have to sort of go, "Oh, I can't drink tonight. I can't do that." So there was a structure to my drinking. Come the weekend, absolutely, I'd be drinking. We'll have Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. Um, but when the pandemic happened, there was no structure. And I
Mm.
think like
Every
half the
day was a
population,
Saturday, wasn't it?
every day was Saturday. And
Mm.
I mean, the first few weeks, I was very fortunate. We had a nice place to live, and it was like we were in the garden, the sun was out, and it was just, oh yeah, what time is it? Oh, come on. And it's when it would have been that you would open a bottle of wine with your dinner at 7:30 at night when you got in from work. Now we were opening at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, yeah. So you
And just
consume that
drinking,
much more.
and then at the end of the pandemic, and I got on the scales, and I went, "Oh my God." So I'm going to do dry January, which I often do. So I did dry January, felt great. Then I went back to drinking for a bit, and then I just said to my husband, "Do you know what? I'm going to give up for another month." And I've become interested about why when the nights when I wasn't having a drink, I would be like, "Oh God, I really want drink, I really want a drink." And it was like, what is that about? What is that about? And
Mm,
this compulsion to that nothing's going to be as great as it would be if you had a glass of red in your hand, everything's much more fun. And I just got curious about it. And so I gave up again. And there was a brilliant free thing on the internet called The Alcohol Experiment by Annie Grace, which is sort of like, if you're questioning your relationship with alcohol, it's free. And I did it. I decided to do it for 30 days. And, and I've sort of like, I haven't really gone back to it yet.
But you sort of did it without laying a load of pressure on yourself, like, "I am going to
Well,
have a dry
I
January. I'm
haven't,
just gonna
yeah,
see how it
look,
feels."
my feelings around it are different from when I started. I feel very strongly about anything that you do that involves willpower, unless you happen to be that kind of person who really likes structure in your life and gets off on that. Let's face it, most of us with, any sort of smokers, drinking, sex, food, you know what I mean? We're not that way
Addictive.
inclined.
Yeah.
So I already knew that anything that involved willpower was not the answer. And I would urge people to consider this, when you're thinking about diets and stuff. Diets only last as long as you're on them. And
Mm.
the fact is, the reason that there are millions of them, I think to me sort of says something. What worked for me was I got curious. I wonder what it would feel like if I didn't have that feeling of like, oh God, I could really do with a glass of red wine. I wonder what it would feel, what that would feel like to be free of that feeling. I wonder why it is I have that feeling. And I think everything starts with curiosity.
Mm.
Everything starts. Curiosity will lead you to so many things. And that's the way I approached it. And I just what I've ultimately learned, which again you'll come to in the end of the book, which I think has really helped me, is I don't take my thoughts too seriously. I don't believe everything I'm thinking. Just because I have a passing thought that says, "My God, you really want to drink," or "Oh God, I really want a fag." I mean, I don't smoke, but I did at one point, years and years ago. It's like, "Oh, I really want a fag." "Oh God, I really want a fag." That's just a persistent thought that you're hanging on to. It's just a thought you're choosing to hang on to. If you just acknowledge that you're like, "Oh yeah, I'm having that thought. I'm having that thought." But but the thoughts by their very nature are like clouds. They do pass. We choose which thoughts we want to hang on to, and they're usually the bad ones. I
They
mean,
are. They're the ones
there's
that give
lots,
us so much
yeah.
anxiety.
And we get so wrapped up in the content of our thinking when really the most important thing is that we have the ability to think. And there are times, like we do choose what we hang on to. Uh, You could be walking, I say this in the book, you can be walking a lovely cliff walk with the dog and suddenly thought will pop in your head and go like, oh, I wonder what it'd be like if I jumped. I mean, a lot of us have had that kind of weird, we don't do it.
Mm.
We just notice it. And then we just go carry on with our walk and watch the dog and notice the view. And it's like the thought is gone. It's the ones we kind of cling on to that causes the issue. So
Yeah, and I love.
my way, but giving up anything starts
Yeah.
with just going, oh, here's that voice. I notice that voice. It doesn't serve me. And if I get present in the moment of what I'm doing, it's going to just pass by in another thought will come in.
It's almost
And it's
easier said than done, though, isn't it? Because I think particularly in midlife, we really do overthink, and at 4 a.m., boom, your brain's alight, and you're thinking about the things that you said to so and so, and
But I
you know,
think, and this is what I come on to,
over and over again.
no, this is what I come on to in the second part of the book. I'm very much, I got introduced to the three principles by Sydney Banks. And the three principles, it's not a self-help thing. It's not some magical thinking. It's not a prescriptive, do this, follow this, and life will be great. It is purely an explanation of how we experience our life. And the reality is that, it's made of mind, consciousness, and thought. Mind is the universal mind, everything that is bigger than us. The fact that we are this energy, the fact that, we're all a bunch of cells and everything is made of the same energy, but in different forms. So it's like whether you want to call it quantum or God or whatever your frame of reference is.
Mm.
The second is consciousness. This is incredible gift that we have the ability to be aware of what we're thinking. Do you have that ability? And the third thought is what we use to create our reality. It's like the glasses we wear that color how we see and feel about everything. And that I
Right.
feel in three principles, it's kind of like we've forgotten how to use the system, in that we take everything we think as the truth.
As reality.
We
Yeah.
take it as reality, and we don't need to. Um, and all of our feelings, all of our emotions, if you think about it, you are only ever feeling your thoughts. That's all there is. You don't feel anything but what you are thinking. Do you
Mm.
understand?
Yeah. But you
Um,
can let them go. Gosh, if
can let
only
them
you
go.
could do. There was you used a metaphor in the book, and I think it was a friend of yours that said, if the fire alarm goes off, and then you find out it's the test fire alarm, you're like, oh, it's just a test. I can move on. I don't have to worry. I'm not in a life-threatening situation. And if you can
I don't know
apply
that
that.
that's not that's my friend Sari's. That's not in mine.
Oh, you mention it in your book though, that
Did I?
yeah. Oh, we don't have to do that. That's fine.
No, no, no,
But
no, no,
but
no.
actually
That's fine. No, that's fine. No,
that
I mean,
totally made
the one. Are you sure?
sense to me.
No, you're talking about the fire across the road.
Yeah, like if you know that you're not in danger,
Yes.
then you can let that
Yeah, in
go.
fact, yeah, absolutely. Sari does the three principles. Yeah,
It's part of the three principles.
yeah, it's kind of like it's what we attach to it, the thought. So if a fire alarm goes off and you're in the middle of a conversation, fire alarm goes off, you go, oh God, the fire alarm, right? What's happening? When someone says to you, it's okay, it was just testing the fire alarm, you carry on in that conversation and you don't take too much attention. Your attention is taken away from the noise.
Yeah,
So it's like, depending on your state of mind and where you are at in that, it's like we can discern which thoughts we'd have to take seriously. There is common sense. There's inner wisdom. It's like, if I want to stick my hand in the fire, there is a little voice in me that would say, do you know what? That's not going to be a good idea. And that voice is quiet and still and doesn't sort of ruffle me in any sense. But we just have forgotten how to listen to our thinking. I mean, so what's changed for me in everything is like with believing that I didn't belong. It was like I created this thought. Nobody did anything to make me feel that. It all came from my own warped thinking, of
mm,
the beliefs that I've picked up, or things that I'd taken, and my interpretation of what that person had said. Like, for example, my mother said when I first went to school, now, probably don't tell anybody you're adopted, just keep it quiet. She was saying, kids can be cruel. They can find things to pick on people, and I want to protect you from that.
yeah.
A very
Mm.
loving thing. I took it as, don't tell anyone because it's a bad thing. There's something wrong with you.
Do
So
you
it's
think?
how we interpret things and what we choose to hang on to and what becomes our reality. The reality is now I understand that my thinking was wrong, that I
Yeah,
got it wrong and it's not true. So I choose which thoughts I'm going to believe in. And I get it right every time? Absolutely not, because we're human. But what I do is I use the feeling, I use my emotions. Like in a day, we have a continuum. Our moods can go up, they can drop, they can go up, they can go down, but all sorts of, something will happen, oh, I've just spilled my cup of tea, my thoughts will go down. Whatever I'm feeling, I use that as a barometer to test whether it's something, so if I'm having a conversation with you and I'm in a bad mood and we're in the conversation, I might say, oh my God, she's so annoying. She's really annoying. When my mood lifts to a bit more, I'd say, oh God, that's really insightful what she said then. Do you know what I mean? We change all the
yeah,
time.
yeah,
And it's just like, I just try and catch myself when I can see it's insecure thinking. If it's got a bad feeling attached to it, if I'm not feeling it, if it's giving me a sensation of something bad, or you've annoyed me and I really want to say something, I listen to that feeling. I go, right, well, you're probably not in the right frame of mind to be saying that now. So don't react. sit on it, wait until you're in a better mood, and then see how you feel. And quite often you go, I can't remember what it was, the one thing you're going to react
It's
about.
not so important anymore.
Not so
That certainly
important.
comes with years of maturity, doesn't it? That,
Yeah.
you know,
And do we get it right all the time? Of course we
no,
don't.
of course
Of course
not.
we don't.
Do you
But I
think
just,
writing the
mm,
book, do you think writing the book gave you a sense of catharsis because you were able to, write down all of these experiences and how you felt at the time? And now, as you, Sue Cleaver at 60, 61, you look at that and you think, oh, like I see now that maybe I wasn't as othered. I felt othered. I felt like I
mm,
didn't belong, but actually, maybe I did. Maybe it was not that situation and I acted out
of course I
in all
belong.
these places.
Yeah,
So do you
of
think it was
course.
really good for you to work through those emotions?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been working through them. The book sort of came as a culmination, but yes, yeah, of course, those realizations where I've always, we all belong by default. We're here, we all
Yeah.
belong. But it's a story of how your thinking can trip you up.
Mm.
You know, how we get seduced by our thoughts and we believe them. And just having that awareness that not every thought you have is truthful, is a great tool. It's a great tool. And
And
I try now to say, teach that to my son. And I just, by the feeling whether something's reliable or not. It's like
I'll,
we take our physical bodies. We never think twice about it, do we? It's like, you can drink 3 gallons of wine and you'll have a hangover and you'll be like, oh my God, I feel terrible. I feel awful. But it's like, you kind of accept it because it's your body getting rid of the toxins. It's like, we accept all that's going on, that the body will deal with all the physical things. And yet we don't do that when it comes to our mind, do we? We feel
mm,
like, oh, to solve anything, we have to think about it more. We've got to analyze it. We've got to go deep into it and find a solution. And it's like, actually, it's the same. Just let your mind get on with it. Let it quieten down. Let it quieten down, and it will come up with its solution. A much better one than if you sit there spending hours thinking, oh my God, and that anxiety and that, oh, I've got to sort
then
this.
you just spiral with that, don't you? You just go
Yeah,
round and
and
around and
it's
round and come
all
to no
nonsense
solution.
because it's all projecting into the future. You're right, man. How many times do we rehearse how a conversation is going to go, what's going to happen, and it's never true. It's never true. It never happens. It's like we get stuck in the thought, but we just I mean, it's just a habit we do over and over again. We think we have to think our way out of this problem. Well, how about we just go, sitting with a bad feeling, feels not okay at the minute. I wonder if I just sit back and leave that alone for now. And that's when usually I find that a bit of inspiration pops in and you go, oh, actually, that's what I'll do.
Yeah, yeah. But putting some distance between the problem or the situation or the thought
Yeah,
and
which
dealing
I've
with it
always been,
later.
because I've lived my life. I've been so impetuous, so impetuous. I'm just like, I was like, I have to do it. I've got to do it now. Got to do it now. Always
Yeah.
searching the next thing, because I was always trying to get away from myself.
And that's why you move from job to job to job.
Yeah,
But you stayed in this one for many years and
because I
obviously
loved it. I found what I
because
loved to do. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And life experience is a bit of a superpower, isn't it? You say that in the book that,
yes,
the older that we get, we need to use that, not be invisible, not be, in midlife. We come into ourselves so much
yeah,
more. I don't know about you, but I feel like I am now probably in the best decade of my
yeah.
life.
And that's another reason why I wanted to write it, because I think it's a universal thing for no matter where you are, what you do in your life, your career, your choices in life. It's like we all get to that point where society has told us we're at the end.
Mm.
The menopause is it's wonderful that there's the awareness out there, but it's also, I kind of want, come on, let's get over the menopause. There's life beyond menopause. There's a
Very
huge
much.
amount of life out there. I'm I think an empty nesters, I hear them go like, well, that's it now. My work's done.
No,
It's like,
far from
no,
it.
my God, just recreate yourself. Just be brave. Just, have something fun. I think you don't have to do big things. You don't have to write books or whatever you want to do. Do it if you want to. But I think the biggest thing to do now is to do things that bring you joy.
I
That's
could
what it
not
is.
agree more.
Do things that
Absolutely.
bring you joy. And
And
put a toe out of your comfort zone.
yeah,
Not great bigs, but one tiny little toe out and just test the water. Because it's like people say, "Well, I'm not adventurous. I'm not brave enough, or I'm too scared to do that." Well, no, it's like courage. Courage is it. You don't people don't have courage or not have courage. It's a muscle. It's
you
a
create
muscle.
it.
It's like everything else. It's just you exercise it. Just tiny little things.
Exactly. As
You
you
know,
say, it can go
get on
small.
Google if you wanted. If you thought, oh, I wish I'd done an A level, or I wish I'd done this. Get on the internet. Get Googling. Just have a look at it. Make a phone call. It's just do whatever brings you joy, and stop giving yourself a hard time, because you are unique. You are fantastic. There is only one of you, and you have so much to offer the world. And just believe it.
I think that's the perfect way to end this.
Yeah.
Your book will definitely inspire people. It's very authentic. There's a lot of raw parts. You share a lot of stories that I haven't even talked about with you here that are very i- intimate to you, and I love your honesty. It really shines through. And then I also love the way that you weave in such great advice towards the end, and coming from your therapy background and from your life experience,
Mm.
really it's very inspiring. And
Oh, thank
as you
you.
say, good people can make bad decisions,
Yeah,
and this part of our life can be extremely exciting. We just got to put one foot in front of
absolutely.
the other and enjoy it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. I've enjoyed it.